Welcome back to the unofficial Squarespace Entrepreneur Podcast. My name is Amari Harriban, and if this is your first time listening, this show is all about building a business on Squarespace. Today I have with me Christy Price of ChristyPrice.com. And Christy is a Squarespace web designer who I've known for a number of years now. And I was sharing with Christy before we got started with the podcast today that I've really been enjoying the conversations that I've been able to have lately on the show because I'm talking to people who I already know, people who either I've had on the show previously or I've met them in person. And so the conversations are allowing us to go deeper, allowing us to pick up either where we left off on a previous episode and really just bring you along for the ride. Yeah, let's get into it. This one has been overdue for a little bit, and I wanted to talk to you specifically about passive income. And
Uh-huh.
the reason for that is because I'm getting rid of that from my primary vocabulary, and
hmm
I'm replacing it with timeless income. A- And
I love that you said that. So I did a Circle Live a while back and they said the same thing, like I want to talk about passive income. And I said, well, it's not passive. We need to come
Mhm.
up with a new term.
Oh
So I
yeah.
love timeless income as an option for that.
Yeah, it's on the table now. It's available.
hmm Yeah.
And I mentioned this to Will the other day because I had him on, and he was like, "Yeah, you know, me and Christy, we've been using automated income as like
hmm
a term." And I like that because that idea is what attracted me in the first place, and I think that's what attracts people is this
hmm
automation idea, you know.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to like expand on it with you from your experience, from my experience, and hopefully help people along the way who are designers or developers who are currently looking at their business and wondering, okay, how do I get this passive income?
Yeah.
How do I
Yeah.
do this?
I love that. And I'm pretty passionate about it. It does make it so I have three buckets of income for my business. I have my one-on-one client work. I have my course and template sales. And then I have that third bucket that we'll call, timeless income, automated
Yeah.
income. I've also called it residual income
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's residuals from work I did earlier. But I've never liked the term passive income because, as you and I both know, there's a lot of work that goes in to set you up for success and those automated payouts later.
Yeah, and it has to be sustained. So
Right.
for the future for the future residuals, you gotta have some present activity going on.
Uh-huh.
How do your buckets like lead how does is there any like interaction? Like how does your
hmm
one-on-one work affect the the timeless work or timeless
Yeah.
income? Like,
So the timeless income, most of that is affiliate income. And so that is coming from me recommending a product or a service from someone else who has an affiliate program. And I'm pretty picky on what I recommend. It's typically something that I've used myself. And if it's not something I've used myself, purchased myself, it's something that I've done a deep dive on. Maybe it's
mm,
something I don't need, but I think it could be helpful for my clients.
yeah.
So I want to look at things like, how robust is this solution? What's the customer service experience like? Things like that. So it does actually have um, some connection to my one-on-one work. So for example, one of my service offerings is just this 1 hour screen share. So someone who is a DIYer will maybe hit a roadblock and they'll say, I just need to talk to somebody to help me figure out this thing.
Mhm.
And then I can do the rest myself. And very often that thing is something like blogging, and they need a hand with figuring out how to set up a blog. And so, Amari, two of your plugins that I recommend to them are the related posts plugin and the blog sidebar plugin. Now, since I'm not doing that work for them, I'm not using my business license, it's something they're going to do on their own. So I recommend those plugins and they purchase it, install it, and you very kindly send me an affiliate payout for recommending it. And I use those myself. So I feel really great recommending them. I've gone through your customer support process. I know it's good. So, things like that that I can recommend. I recommend in my one-on-one. I recommend in my blogs. If you've come to one of my Ask Us Anything sessions that I do with other people in the Squarespace universe, you and I are going to do one coming up in January, I think.
Yep.
So, during those calls, sometimes the answer to a question is a plugin or a course, and we have affiliate links for those.
Yeah, I love that. It epitomizes everything that I've been like talking about with this Squarespace Guru email series I've been doing,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm walking people through just the simple what I call ingredients, but the simple
Mm-hmm.
journey to becoming your own Squarespace guru. And by
Mm-hmm.
guru I mean teacher, someone
Mm-hmm.
who is trusted and you can accept their recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not anything like above anyone, it's all within
Right.
reach. And it just
Mm-hmm.
starts with the thing that you do on a
Mm-hmm.
regular basis for your clients and looking at the problems that come up along the way,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
questions that people ask. And there's going to be products and services that are the exact solution. And
Right.
if you're an affiliate of those things,
Mm-hmm.
then you can benefit down the line with some residual income.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, something that I used to be guilty of was I would try and reinvent the wheel. I would try and figure things out on my own. I wouldn't really look for or rely on a solution that was already out there.
Hmm.
And that change in mindset, that happened really when I was moving my business to focus on Squarespace. So around 2018, I realized that to grow the business I wanted to grow on Squarespace, I wasn't going to have the luxury of time to figure those things out. And then I needed to rely on people who'd already done that and did it well. And I think that, that's maybe a mindset that sometimes we can get stuck in. It's like, oh, not invented here, right? Like I didn't come up with this. But one of the beautiful things, especially about the Squarespace community, is that I think there is a high level of trust for so many of the plugin providers, course providers, because we see people like you showing up and providing information for free through your podcast, through your email series, and just trying to help other people get started, which I think is a beautiful thing. And there's something about, I think, the Squarespace community in particular that really that resonates with that community and that feeling of support. It's not been there in other communities that I've been a part of, and I think it's a really unique part of this community, whereas people that might even be competitors can still collaborate and can still see where maybe their competitor might be a better fit for a client, and the competitor might send clients to them as well. So it's a really lovely universe, I think, that we found ourselves in. And I don't know what happened to create that space, but it is really lovely.
That's awesome to hear. And I'll tell you why it's awesome. There's one point uh in my journey where I was reaching out to someone to become an affiliate of theirs, and they were like, "Why do you want to be an affiliate if you compete with us, if you have like competing products?" And I was like, "What do you mean? Like I have customers who
Hmm.
need the things that you offer. Like it's not just
Right.
about me and my solutions, it's about the greater good." But that foundational philosophy came to me very early in my freelance journey,
Hmm.
where I learned that you don't necessarily need someone to have already paid you to be a benefit to them.
Hmm.
In fact, it's better off if you just take the approach that the entire market is your client, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like your competitors, you're actually working for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it creates this dynamic where, like you described, there's a lot of collaboration that naturally and organically can come from that because
Mm-hmm.
it's about, like, the greater good, and that's actually
Right.
the next ingredient in the Squarespace Guru series, collaboration. um but yeah, thank you for expanding on that, because I've had an interesting experience of watching it grow in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, my very first offering, like, I used to be a freelance marketing consultant, and I realized it was much easier to just, like, do my own thing and prove out my own strategies than it was to,
Mm-hmm.
like, always be trying to convince people that I could do it for their business.
Mm-hmm.
And doing that, I realized, well, as an affiliate, I can also, like, still do the thing that I said I would do, for these people as a client.
Mm-hmm.
And it allows me to be, like, even more passive, which
Mm-hmm.
is a little segue, because um I reached a point where I'm like, I'm an introvert by nature, and I like
Mm-hmm.
being in my own world. But um but I'm like, well, the only way to, like, continue this journey is to be active, and to, like, talk to people and share
Mm-hmm.
things, and, like, um not not be passive, which is why another reason why I'm trying to rid the idea. But this morning, or right before this, I hit record over here, I was writing some notes on what are those unexpected things that happen that cause you to be like, oh yeah, I need this type of business model to work for me.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I came up with is just, like, unexpected, like, life things.
Oh my goodness, Amari.
Yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, not to take us down a sad path, but last year we had five significant losses in our family, and it was a rough, rough year. And in August, when one of those losses happened, I realized, like, I can't do any one-on-one work. I just can't. I can't show up for that. I need to be here for my family.
Mhm.
And what I did was I ran a flash sale on my own digital products. And I sent out a couple of emails about affiliate products that I really love. And I was able to recoup the income that I would have made from one on one work. And I think just having that as a safety net is so nice, because when life does, you know, throw you something unexpected, and you're not able to be fully present and work on one work with clients, then there is some safety net that you can rely on with affiliates and with digital products as well.
Chrissy, how did you get into, like, what was your Squarespace transition point that made you say, okay, let me focus my business on Squarespace web design?
Yeah, so I have been doing web design for a couple of decades now. So I started out, like, back in the day when we would build a website, we would actually make it in Photoshop and then slice it up into columns and rows and code it as a table.
Heard about that.
So that and Dreamweaver were kind of how I got started. And then when I moved to freelance work, I decided to work on WordPress. Like, that at the time felt like the gold standard. I don't know if it was, but it felt like the right place to be. And I did that for a number of years until, you have those moments. And I think there was just this moment where I realized I really don't enjoy working in WordPress. My client sure can't do anything on their own. I don't want to do maintenance anymore. I need to find a different solution. So, if you're familiar with WordPress, you know that you have to do maintenance on your WordPress sites at a minimum every month, or if
Mhm.
things just can go horribly wrong. And I just found that super draining. I didn't want to grow an agency, so I didn't want it, to have someone I could hand it off to. So in 2017 and early 2018, I built two websites in every website builder I could get my hands on. So, Wix, Weebly, Squarespace, Strikingly was another one that was out there at the time. I don't think it's around anymore,
They still exist.
but oh, they do.
I'm an
Okay.
affiliate.
Oh, okay. Awesome. So I built a couple of websites, simple ones on all of those. I actually still have a couple of Wix websites out in the wild. Um, but Squarespace was the platform that did a couple of things really well. One is that it worked the way my brain worked, which, is really important if you're going to be spending a lot of time with the platform. And
Yeah.
the other thing that I think in 2018 that I was really drawn to about Squarespace is that it was really hard to turn a website into a dumpster fire. So I could hand it off to clients, give them a minimal amount of training, and they could update their website themselves and it would still look pretty good. Right. So it was one of those things that's like, hey, I think this is it. I can build the website, I can train people how to edit it themselves, unless they need to like add pages or something, that requires a little bit more knowledge.
When you
And
say, yeah,
that's how I ended up on Squarespace.
when you say it works the way your brain works, what do you mean by that?
Mhm. Yeah. So one of the things I loved about Squarespace was that they had the separate CSS panel. And I always, like in my mind as a coder, I would have the HTML in one part of my brain and the CSS in the other part. And the way it divided that up so nicely um, just made so much sense to me. And it just seemed like the back end of Squarespace kept everything very tidy in the same buckets that I would keep it in my brain. So it was that plus at the time. So this was when we were all using the classic editor. It made sense to me that when you shifted an element, all the other elements would shift to accommodate it because I think, as web designers, we're really used to thinking about responsiveness and how things shift and move depending on page size. And that's something I think that if you're coming from a non-web design background, you're like, oh, it's like a piece of paper when it's not. It's very liquid, it's very fluid. And so having that, the way the classic editor worked also very much worked like my brain. And so just those things combined with the ability to hand it off so easily and have it still look like a good professional website was just, it was chef's kiss. It was perfect.
Yeah. See, I've only had the Squarespace experience, so I don't have like
Hmm.
a prior WordPress. Um, I mean, before Squarespace for me, it was like Tumblr for a
Hmm.
few years, and then before that, I was just like straight up, HTML, CSS.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that's really interesting. And then so let's call it like the educational side of your business model. Like,
Hmm.
how did that come to be? Has that always been, or was that like a new adventure for you as well?
So when I decided to move my business to Squarespace, as you know, when you make big changes, you have to kind of start some things over from scratch.
Yeah.
So finding clients that wanted help with Squarespace, I knew was going to be one of my big challenges. And at the time, there was a company called 60, and they would basically pair people who needed help with experts on the platform. And they worked with Squarespace. So I did an interview with them, and I I would say I oversold what I was able to do in Squarespace at the time, but I used it as a learning opportunity. So the beautiful thing about 60 was that when somebody had a question, they actually had to fill out a very intensive brief. So by the time they showed up on your screen, you'd had about a day to read the brief and figure it out. So what I would do is I would, get somebody who would book a call with me. I'd read their brief, I'd go and learn it all, I'd figure it all out. And then by the time we had the call, I was an expert in it and I could show them how to do it. So that was really how I learned the ins and outs of Squarespace. And when I realized that that kind of educational component would be a great part of my business, not just with one-on-one and continuing to offer those, hour screen shares on my own, but also in terms of blogging and answering questions that I saw people had.
That's awesome. I didn't know that, and that makes a lot of
Mhm,
sense because I kind of wondered. I'm like, Chrissy's got this a continue like there's a continuum with your screen share sessions.
mhm,
But to know that 60 was kind of like the foundation is kind of
yeah,
interesting because
mhm,
I before they were called 60, they used to be called Design Live, and
yes.
they were my first partners at Squarespace themes back in like 2015. Um,
Amazing. Small
yeah,
world.
I was I was trying to immediately I was trying to like retire from having to do any kind of client work, so
Mhm,
I would refer everything over to Design Live.
mhm,
Um, and lately I've been wondering, like, I think there's a void with that where people still need that kind of like screen share with an expert
mhm,
sessions, because I see things like that come up all the time in the Facebook world,
right,
where people, they just need a 30-minute kind of like, all
mhm,
right, crash course on how to accomplish this thing they're trying to accomplish.
right. Yeah, I agree, and I think sometimes it's there's this one thing I need to figure out. I can't figure it out on my own. I can't find it. I'm not Googling the right terms to know what it is that I'm looking for. And if you just had an expert in your pocket for 30 minutes, it would get you over the hump. You would know what it's called, you know what you're looking for, you would see how to do it, and then you can just move on. So I think that those short screen shares are very valuable for DIYers.
Yeah. So if you're listening, I would definitely consider that in your arsenal. And just the way you describe like starting the what I just asked and using these opportunities to like learn the ins and outs of the
Mhm,
platform. Like I think
right.
that's really smart. Like what would you, for someone who's starting out today, like how would
Mhm.
you advise them to go about that same thing and without going on 60 because it doesn't exist anymore?
Right. No, I um my best advice I think would be to reverse engineer other websites. So you see a website and you're like, I think that's cool. It's got some neat features. I like those layouts. Try and build it yourself in Squarespace. See what roadblocks you hit and see how to overcome them. And that's something that I did as well when I was building websites and all these different platforms. I wasn't just like building from my brain. I would find a website and say, I want to make that website in this platform. And that will really help you learn the limitations of the platform, but also help you figure out the best way to find workarounds. And maybe that's a plugin, maybe it's a code snippet, maybe it's just a little hack that you come across. But I think that those pain points are really where you learn and where you grow.
For facts. Um, what would well, okay. You're like answering these questions really well in a way. It's like
Thanks, Omari.
um uh my train of thought kind of went off the track real quick.
Oh, I'll go with you. I can go off the track.
All right, cool. Um, but basically, I'm thinking, okay, do you still do that now?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay,
So if there's something that a layout that I see that I'm like, oh,
yeah.
I wonder, could I do
Mm-hmm.
that? Then I'll definitely, pop it in a section on a website I'm working on and just try it out. Yeah,
Okay,
I still do that.
okay, cool. Because I
Mhm.
still do that too, and I was trying to like cross-reference myself to be like, do I really still? Okay, cool. Yeah, I do still do that.
I
Why?
do.
and
Yeah.
and I realized like there's a part of me that just doesn't want to leave that place because I know how valuable it is.
Mhm.
And that's something that I'm actively keeping at the forefront of my mind now, is like, how do I stay in that place where I'm always kind of like in that mode of discovery? And I am
Mhm.
I never quite leave it, but
Mhm.
um there's a tendency to think that you need to, like, there's a, like, I don't know, maybe sometimes things get boring and you got to try new things, but
I also think maybe it's like problem solving is a muscle that you need to flex.
mm,
And so when you get in the mode of like, I'm going to figure this out, it's easier for you to figure other things out as well. You're not going to accept defeat as easily. So
mm,
I think that, setting those kinds of challenges is just, I don't know, I think it's healthy.
yeah, that's cool that you said that, because I had that experience coding earlier this
Hmm.
year. I took a deep dive, and I learned that 99 out of the 100 things that I tried wouldn't work. And I know that's true in other parts of life, but with this
Hmm.
focus that I had, it was just like clear as day. It was just like this
Hmm.
nonstop failure. And then it would be
Hmm.
like after 3 days, like one thing worked, and it was like, wow.
Yeah.
But
And it feels so good, right? When
yeah,
you figure it out. Yeah.
yeah, I felt that muscle, and I was like, okay, I could take this anywhere, and it relieves a lot of the stress of like having to always get it right the first time.
Right. I don't think any of us should expect ourselves like, oh, go into this and I'm all knowing and I'm going to just nail it on the first try. I think we all learn through failure and just like, oh, that didn't work. Let me pivot. Let me see what would work. Is there a way to make this work or do I need to change the lens that I'm looking at this through and maybe try something different? So, yeah, I'm a big fan of just trying things out, seeing if they work, and then pivoting if you need to. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna be selling that because I'm gonna be selling failure, because the default, right, is like, the default that we use is like, oh, you don't have to make my mistakes, you don't have to do it,
Mhm.
but no, guess what? You got to make your own
You've got to
mistakes.
make your own mistakes.
You know,
Yeah, because if somebody just hands it to you, I mean, you're not getting all of the knowledge that came behind that. And you don't know, I mean, you've got a solution, but when you implement it, you're still going to be running into roadblocks and still going to be running into problems. Because maybe your situation is different or your clients are different.
hmm,
So there will always be opportunities for learning.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm leaning all the way into the truth, which is, there's a lot of problems that come up, and
Hmm.
there's not one easy does it fix it all. But
Right.
um
And you
there
know
is
what?
there's
The
way,
fix could be different for different people too,
yeah.
right?
Hmm.
I mean, I think about that with, when I was starting out with Squarespace and I was really working on how my business would flow from proposal to how the build would go and the timeline and the support afterwards. I've honed in on something that works really well for me, but that doesn't necessarily mean it would work well for you. You know, I
Hmm.
like really quick timelines for builds. And I know other designers who, they're like, no, I do a lot of projects at once. So I need a longer timeline because I'm balancing these three different projects. So there are a lot of different ways you can set up your business that work for you.
Yeah, that's a big learner,
Yeah.
because in the beginning you're looking for models, you're looking for
Hmm.
examples, you're looking
Hmm.
for, different ways, and depending on your level of, I guess, maybe self-confidence or awareness,
Hmm.
determines how much you depend on that and in the long
Hmm.
term, or how much of it you take and transmute into your own.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
and I definitely think that there's starting with one of those models that's gonna save you so much time, and then you can iterate on it to make it your own. I think, yeah, that seems like really efficient, but also really easy to personalize as well as you go forward.
I've been reflecting a lot on my early role models in my,
Mhm,
like, freelance entrepreneurial journey,
mhm,
and going back to like the emails that were influential to me, going back to like the courses that I bought,
mhm,
the things that that I got something out of, and then looking at where I am now and saying, okay, cool. Now I can kind of map my own tree, so to speak,
Mhm.
of like influences for myself, and I
Right.
can articulate why those individuals were influential to me then, and now I kind of see them as peers, which is lets me know that I grew up.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but for a long time they were kind of like superstars to me in my consciousness, because they were
Mhm.
living a lifestyle that I wanted to live. They
Mhm.
were expressing themselves in the way that I wanted to be able to express myself.
Mhm.
And they were educators. And I didn't realize it at the time, but um, I'm an educator. That was what I was supposed to
Mhm.
be doing.
Mhm.
But now it's more clear to me. And I use that as a model for others, where it's like these are recipes. Like I got some
Mhm.
dishes that I like to cook up.
Mhm.
Christy's got some dishes. Like everyone's
Mhm.
got their own thing. And this community is like one big potluck. Everyone
Right.
brings everyone brings
Yeah.
their dish, and we
Mhm.
get to sample it, and we get to say, oh, how did you make that, Christy? That's nice.
Right. Omari, I haven't tried that seasoning before. That's yeah.
Yeah, I got some sauce over here that, that it could add some flavor to everyone's dish.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's allspice. But yeah, and I think that's what makes this like such a rich experience, and why I love coming back to the potlucks.
Mhm. Yeah, I think so too, and I think that, you know, I know I said this earlier, but because this is such a collaborative community, it really is. You can take a little bit from learn a little bit from one person, learn a little bit from someone else. It doesn't mean that one is right and one is wrong. You can combine different information for yourself. But there are a lot of really amazing, trusted experts in this arena, and sometimes they may disagree. So, you know, I may prefer one platform for email marketing and you might prefer a different one. And so if somebody's new coming up and they're trying to decide, well, which one is for me, you've got to put on all the hats and try them out and figure out which one fits your head, and just see which one is for you.
Yeah, yep, for sure. I've built my business that way. You've built your business that way.
Hmm.
Um, to me, it seems like a pretty good way. and
Well, we're
and
two for two.
and the great thing about that way is we're two completely different people,
Right.
with completely different experiences and so
Hmm.
forth. But there is a common thread, and I'm always
Hmm.
looking for the common thread.
Hmm.
And I think maybe that's what helps me along. And that common thread of just actively problem solving, for
Hmm.
yourself and others,
Hmm.
is a very simple thing, but it's easy to miss when uh, the habit might be just to look out for yourself,
Yeah. Yeah.
or maybe the
I
habit
think
might be to withhold information rather than
I
reveal it.
I was gonna say another common thread I see, Omari, is that, we both share information. So we both have email lists. I know I'm on your email list, and so I get your emails and I learn something from them. And I hope people learn something from mine too. So I don't think either of us are gatekeeping at those initial levels. It's like, we want to share something we've learned and be helpful.
Yeah, and I think you're speaking to values, and that's I think
Hmm.
what ultimately attracts people, and what where you find your people, or
Hmm.
the ones whose things make sense for you, is when there's like a
Yeah.
common value that you share. And
Hmm.
the value that you're speaking to, that I used to aspire to, which I've found in you, is like a transparency,
Hmm.
where you can trust this person, because like they're just telling you what it is. Uh, they're not like trying to uh make it something that it's not.
Hmm. Yeah. I think that was something you said early on is, developing this community of trust. And kind of going back to the passive income, or whatever we're going to call it today,
Timeless.
um, timeless income, residual income. I think one of the things that, if somebody's getting started on that path, one of the things that I would be cognizant of is being particular about the things that you recommend. So, for example, I don't recommend like HelloFresh or Stitch Fix or things like that that aren't relevant to my business, not relevant to my clients. And I think, keeping your track pretty narrow can actually afford you more of that like no trust factor, instead of like, oh, she's hawking food today and sweaters tomorrow. Um, so I think that that's something to be aware of when you start out, because it can be like, oh, I could be an affiliate for all of these things, but really narrowing it in to the things that matter to you and your audience is really important, I think.
Yeah, I'm that person.
Are you, Amari?
No,
I
not right now,
remember.
not right now. But once upon a time, like when I so my first affiliate experience was in high school. My first first website that I had up. I remember I signed up for Commission Junction. This is like
Oh, I know
2001.
Commission Junction. Yeah.
Yeah. And I signed up and I just didn't it just seemed like I didn't get it. I'm like, are you telling me I could just put this banner on my site and someone clicks on it, I get 25 cents every time like why can't
Yeah.
I just click? Like it just seemed like not otherworldly. Like
Right.
I
It's
didn't even have
magic.
scam in my vocabulary, but it just seemed like this doesn't seem like real, like legit. That's the word. It just
Hmm.
didn't seem legit. And so I I I didn't have the means or resources or anything to really make sense of it at the time.
Hmm.
But then later on in college, there would be these like prize things that would come up where it's like I don't know if it was quizzes, but just some stuff that just seemed like a scam. Like, what is these like things that are
Hmm.
so scammy? And then I launch off on my own and leave corporate world and try this stuff, and I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, maybe there's something here. Maybe this
There's
affiliate
a
thing isn't.
there's a kernel of goodness there.
Yeah. And then even so, um it took me about it took me about 3 years before I saw like a commission payment that made me say, oh, okay, I should pay attention to this. um
Yeah.
and
It
the
took
first
me,
Yeah, go
yeah, it
ahead.
took me about a year of blogging before I really had traction. Yeah, I
And
totally get that.
yeah, it was probably about a year of blogging as well for me,
Hmm.
but like on and off with just like thinking, okay, I can just like promote this thing real quick
Hmm.
and that's
Hmm.
it. And then it would just be like, okay, $8 or like, something
Right.
minuscule that you can't live off of. So
Hmm.
I just disregarded it as like something that I can't live off of
Hmm.
until suddenly one day I check my like a Shopify partner thing and I see
Uh-huh.
$444 in there. And I'm like, what? I'm not even a Shopify guy.
Hmm.
But and I didn't even remember where I put the link. It was one of those. Um,
That's the best.
but it made me pay attention. I'm like, okay, so there's something here. I need to do
Yeah.
whatever I did, I need to do it some more. And
I just have to figure out where it was.
then I
I've
became
done that same
obsessed.
thing.
Yeah, then I became obsessed, and then it was like, okay, I got to sign up for Purple Carrot. I got to sign up. any anything that I used in my house, anything I wanted to use, I became an affiliate for. um because in my mind I'm like, I can't not be an affiliate for all of these things I consume. But I learned the
Yeah,
lesson
yeah,
that at
yeah.
the end of the day, you still have to have some focus and an audience
Mhm.
around something. So I could still, be a Purple Carrot affiliate if I
Sure.
was, making Instagram reels about their meals,
Right.
but I'm not doing that.
Yeah,
I'm talking about
yeah.
this. So yeah.
Yeah, I do. I will say that occasionally, so at the bottom of my newsletters, I have like a little section that's like useful and fun stuff that aren't necessarily related to Squarespace. So every now and then you'll find an affiliate link in there for something that I'm just like, this is the best thing ever and everyone should know about it.
See,
But it's certainly like on more like the 1% or less of what I'm talking about and what you see in my content. But I think you made a really good point, Amari, in terms of this income stream that we're creating and how it is not at all passive. So you and I both blogged for about a year before we started seeing any payoffs at all. Um, and I think that that's really something that's not often talked about. I think people do think it's like this magic thing. I'm just going to put this affiliate link in an email and I'll have $1,000. And it really is not just, I mean, maybe if it goes viral, but it really is kind of building up a library of useful, helpful content and creating affiliate links within that that are also helpful to people. And then over time, you'll see your traffic increase if you're providing useful and helpful information. More people will click those affiliate links, more people will make purchases, and it's like a snowball effect. So the amount that I make today in a month is far greater than the amount I made 3 years ago in a month from affiliate income, and it's not that much more work. It's the same thing I was doing, but I'm just building on it.
yeah, so it definitely compounds, and
Mhm.
it's great when it can compound in an area that you're interested in, where
Mhm.
it almost doesn't feel like work. And I think that's
Right.
what I enjoy is this realization, or just coming to terms with the fact that everything you're saying is like it's true, where I take these deep dives all the time. Like I took a deep dive into Tidio a couple days ago because my developer sent it to me as a potential option as like a new customer ticketing system with
Mhm.
some AI functionality. And
Ooh.
I checked it out. And because I've done my own AI, created my own AI support kind of
Mhm.
thing, I know what's possible, or I know like what I need for myself. And so when I take this deep dive and I realize, oh, this doesn't do what I know is possible,
Mhm.
um, it validates my previous deep dives, because
Right.
I'm able to bring something else to the equation.
Mhm.
And then I can immediately, like, I nowadays I just hit record as soon as I'm doing something new, because if it's new to me, then it's going to be new to someone else as well.
Right.
And that doesn't get old, you know.
Mhm.
And even if what's new to me today is old to someone else, it's still going to be new tomorrow.
Mhm.
So I'm That's the timeless part as well.
Yeah.
Is that when you tap into these like ever present or uh, unexpected problems that always come up,
Mhm.
you start to be able to create responses and solutions to those things that will be timeless.
Mhm.
Where 5 years down the road, someone is still able to use that thing that you created in an hour today. You know,
Mhm.
like this podcast. I hope, 5 years from now, someone can listen back and say, "Oh, okay, thanks. I needed that."
That would be great. Yeah.
I don't know what problem. Oh yeah, the problem. Oh, the unexpected problems, the life problems. We took a big tangent.
We did.
But I think that I mean that really I think that is really what it is
Mhm.
for most of us. It's like the things that we have to respond to urgently usually come down to family.
Yeah.
There's nothing
Mhm.
higher up on the food chain in terms of urgencies. And sometimes work can kind of like replace that, but then as soon as something happens with work, we're reminded, oh, okay, here's where my priorities are.
Mhm.
So I think learning about this maybe in preparation, as a form of like, okay, how do I ensure myself long term that the things that
Yeah.
I'm doing today can possibly keep paying off for me, a year or two down the road.
Yeah.
That's how I would. That's how I would receive this.
Hmm. I think it is a really good way to consider future proofing your business and just the more and I think too, we talked about the buckets that I have. And if, if for some reason one of those buckets is not available to me, like the one-on-one work for whatever reason, I have the other buckets and I can put a little more effort there and they'll pay off. And so I think that, having different income streams is also something you can consider for future proofing your business, just in case something happens. So, maybe tomorrow it's like you realize that you're not going to be able to do any more client work for a while, and having some other options available to you, whether that's um, this kind of affiliate income, or if it's, you create some digital products, having those different options, I think is a great way for you to be able to pivot if you need to.
I like that you use buckets as the term, because I think about it like buckets as well, where like in Jamaica we have like catch rainwater, with these big
Hmm.
things by the house.
Hmm.
And so the way I think about it a lot of times is like, with when I run into problems and I find a solution, like I leave a bucket there, so
Yeah.
I'm just leaving as many buckets around so that when the rain comes, there's something to capture. I'm gonna finish us with a story, right? This happened to me
Yeah.
yesterday, and I think it kind of illuminates some of what we just discussed. Um, my son woke me, or he didn't wake me up, but he told me when we woke up that we were gonna go play some football before breakfast. So I'm like, okay, sure. Like I have to fulfill this request because
Hmm.
it's in line with my dream is like, for my kid to be able to have that freedom. So anyway, we're playing football, and my pinky ring falls off, and or it launches off, I should say, because I hadn't eaten breakfast yet. And it's a ring that I got from my grandfather um, years ago, and I'm like, okay, well, it's shouldn't take us but a couple minutes to find it, you know.
Hmm.
Anyway, almost an hour goes by, and we're
Oh
we're just
no.
we're combing this field. The grass is wet. It's early in the
Oh
morning.
no.
I'm like, I'm mystified. I'm like, this is out of my control, right?
Hmm.
Clearly. So I decide it's time to go home, get some breakfast, and I would find a metal detector and come back.
Smart.
So had some breakfast. I Googled my zip code plus metal detector, and I found a hardware store across from town that I didn't even know existed. So I go over there. They've got like a bunch of cool stuff that I didn't even know that they had. And I grab a $60 metal detector and I head back
Hmm.
down to the field. And when I get to the field, there's a guy out there with an even more high-tech metal detector. And I'm like, what in the world? Like,
What did you lose?
so I'm like, all right, he's either already found my ring, which great, or
Uh-huh.
he's or
Hmm.
he's about to find it. Um,
Right. It seems like
so
he's an expert, right?
so I get out and I flag him down. I'm like, hey, 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 tell him the situation. He's like, well, I've been combing this field for 4 weeks. I'm like, oh. I'm like,
Wow.
yeah, it's just 2 hours ago that this happened, man. And he's like, oh, well, I haven't found anything this morning. So he starts helping me look. He's like, all right, well, let's just grid out the area. And
Hmm.
I go to the car and I grab my metal detector, which pales in comparison to his. But I bring it out, put in the batteries, bring it out, and he's like, oh yeah, I got one of these as well. Let me show you how to set it up.
Oh,
So
nice.
so he helps me set it up, get the positions right so that you can find the gold ring in the grass. And so he sets me up, and then I start like kind of just like moving in one direction with it. And he's like, no, you got to swing it, swing it. I'm like, oh, yeah, right, swing it. So I start swinging it, and I'm still like mystified. Like, why the heck can I not find this ring? I'm not a
Hmm.
super, I didn't throw like a 30-yard toss to my kid. Like, it's 10 yards. Um, anyway, 5 minutes later, I find it, and I'm relieved.
Amazing.
And I thank the guy, and he's like, "Why are you thanking me? You found it." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right, but you still helped me along the way." And so
Yeah.
I tell that story because I think it speaks to a lot of what we just discussed, where there are these unexpected things that come up
Mhm.
that we have to go find a fix for,
Mhm.
and we might try to do it ourselves for a while and just realize it's probably not going to work out for us for whatever reason.
Yeah, because you gotta
And
swing it.
yeah, we gotta maybe buy a new tool and then get
Mhm.
the person who's an expert with the tool to
Mhm.
help us set it up and guide us on how to best use it, and then we're good, and then we can kind of go on about our way. And now I have a metal detector here whenever I need
Well,
to use one.
I think that is the perfect analogy, and I'm also really thrilled that you found your ring.